what's your life plan? What's your business plan? Make sure they're tied from a perspective of what you're going to do. Crystallize
Right.
your learnings and go apply those learnings to other businesses and help them be successful.
And so from that, before we get into the book, how did you go from that epiphany? Because it's amazing that you were able to do that and not hang on to some of the betrayal and anger, et cetera. Because I know a lot of people would have went down that road for a while, and that would have burned up a year, and you probably wouldn't have your hair. People lose their minds getting stuck in those anger traps.
Yep.
How did you arrive from the journaling, from the One Thing book? How did you end up finding a construction company? How is that where you landed?
Yeah. Well, so in 2003, when I started the sports company, I had a real job. I needed a real job. The sports company was just a hobby. It was just like for fun. And
Right.
I worked in the contracting space. I worked for a .com in the contracting space, handymanonline.com, which is a .com funded business that then ended up in the .com crash. We ended up losing that. But in 2003, with three other partners, I had started a construction commercial contracting business. And that's where my full-time job was. That's where I was getting paid. And I owned 25% of that business.
Right.
Well, as that business grew and the sports company grew, I was more attracted to the sports business in terms of what I wanted to do every single day. So I gravitated to the sports business and then jumped to that business. And the construction company was led by other individuals, but I was still an owner in the business.
Okay.
And so when this happened with the sports company and I found myself losing everything, well, I still had some equity in this construction company over here. And I had worked myself through that business over time to own a little bit more and a little bit more. So I got back with my partner. I had one other partner there at the time. And I said, listen, actually, I'll reverse the story. He came to me during, while I'm laying on the ground going, John, man, I'm sorry what just happened. But don't forget, you got this other company over here. I just saw you grow that sports company north of 50 million. Why don't we take all your energy and put it over here and grow this company? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why not? I wasn't as passionate about the business as I was with the sports business, but it's still a viable business that was doing well. It had been around for 15 plus years.
Wow.
And so with that challenge, I started just thinking, okay, what are my learnings? Like, what would I never do again? If I go help grow this construction company, what are some of my key principles that I'm never going to execute again because it hurt me here? Right. I crystallized those learnings. We applied them to the construction company, and we grew that company to north of 100 million the right way. And that's really what that learning was in terms of growing that construction company and taking the learnings from the sports business and applying it to it.
Right. And you're still working in that construction company today?
Yeah. So what I did, Michael, is I formed a little bit of a holding company because the construction company had its CEO that was running there. I wasn't going to replace him. He was my partner. So great. Let's apply the principles. I'll be the chairperson of that business and we'll help grow this. I acquired the hockey assets out of bankruptcy. We grew that up. We actually sold that a year and a half ago after building it back up again.
Amazing.
I own a digital marketing company, a sports travel hospitality company, which is another piece we picked up from the bankruptcy in the sports hospitality business, a fractional CFO firm, an captive insurance business, and Entrepreneurs United, which is my entrepreneur coaching business. So today I'm the chairperson of a company called the Rhombus Group. And we have 6 companies within the Rhombus Group totaling around $120 million in annual revenues. And I coach the entrepreneurs that run those companies. And I coach entrepreneurs in their own businesses to help them grow the business of their dreams without going off the cliff, which is the subtitle of the book.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it seems like you have so much experience to pour into it. I think every entrepreneur, at least, communities that I've been in and friends that I've spoken to, most people, if they knew how hard starting a business would be, would have never started it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you go back into it, you're kind of just, I think there's something where we're miswired, where optimism is more of the idea, or maybe it's disassociative from the negative ideas that we're like, oh no, this should be no problem. And then, as you know, with anything in business, it always takes longer, and it's worse than you thought it was going to be. It's more challenging than you thought it was going to be. And so I'd love to hear, take us through how you design these principles in your book. If someone wants to think about, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, I haven't started a business before, or I have some experience in the business space, and I would like to start something that, aspirationally gets to $100 million in revenue. I'm sure you'd say now that, you want to have that patient ambition, and maybe it won't get there, but let's say that's the goal. How do you design a pathway that starts at zero?
Yeah. Well, Michael, I'll start this way. I now have a 30-year life plan. And when you think about 30 years, that's a long time.
Mm.
One of the problems we have as entrepreneurs is we overestimate what we can do in a year. Oh, we're going to do this year. We're going to do this year. Like, you overestimate what you can do. But we underestimate what we can do in 10. We underestimate what we could do in 20. We underestimate what we can do in 30 years. And so by having a long-term life plan, I'm in no rush. I got the patience. I can take my time to slowly grow this business the right way. But also I have ambition. I want to grow and be successful and create wealth and do all these things. So I think first off is know what your life plan is, know what you're trying to accomplish before you build your business plan. Because if your life plan is X and your business plan is all the way out in left field, it doesn't match. You gotta make sure they carry each other. So to me, that's the first thing. Is I didn't have a life plan. Most of the entrepreneurs I work with don't have a life plan. They have a business plan. Oh, I spent a lot of time with my leadership team building our business plan, but in no way did it tie to my life plan because I didn't have a life plan. I was just kind of going with the flow. So make sure you know what you want. So to me, that's the number one key is design a 30-year life plan for yourself. That's even before you get into the principles of entrepreneurial success, which we should talk about.
That's great. Okay. And then if you have that life plan, yeah, because it depends. If you read your book when you're 15, that's a lot different if you read that book when you're 45.
Yeah.
Right. But the principles themselves will change for your life, but for the business they stay the same. Like for me, I would definitely need to start because even now I'm currently working as a business broker, which I've been enjoying, but I'm getting the itch to maybe start something on my own. And so for me, I definitely want to stay in Europe. I would love to stay in Spain or Portugal or one of these areas that it feeds my life. And so I would have to design, okay, well, what can I design that, like, my Spanish is okay, but it's not super fluent. So what can I design that's digital, that allows me to work with people, that I'd be helping people, that I'd be, a little bit of a social aspect to it as well, but that I can keep over time for the next, 30, 40 years or whatever while I stay on this continent. And that changes the dynamic for what I would start very much from someone who's, let's say, in, Toronto or New York or whatever, where you could start maybe a more of a brick and mortar business if you want to expand and grow different offices or locations and et cetera. So I think it's great that you have people think about where they want their life to be, so they're not creating a business that ends up backing them into a corner they never wanted to exist in.
Exactly. Too many entrepreneurs do that.
Right.
Too many entrepreneurs end up, working 80-hour weeks, coming home stressed out of shape, marriage is falling apart, not spending enough time with their kids, and then realize, what am I doing? After they lose it all.
Never see their friends. Everything is about the business. I've seen a lot of people in these entrepreneur networking groups that I spent too much time in for quite a while when I first started out, the first 10 years. And I met some of my closest friends in there, but I saw a lot of other guys that were so devoted in their business that they had no real friends aside from these networking meetups. Then when their businesses went away, they were no part of their communities. And then they kind of just ended up being like, okay, well, what have I built? Because I think I've realized now that, a lot of people, they're not in there for friendships. Or I was always more like, I want to meet good people in there. And if they can also help me with what I'm doing, that's great. But I'm really not looking into hanging out with unsavory folks just so I can add 20% to my bottom line this year. So it's a really interesting equation when you're in those communities. And like you said, if you're building a business that doesn't allow for all the goodness that is life, you can't put everything into your business basket.
Extremely well said. Extremely well said. And there's another piece that I talk about a lot, which is knowing what your Venn diagram is, right? So Jim Collins in his book Good to Great has this hedgehog concept, which is, what are you most passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And what can drive your economic engine? And where those three circles intersect, passion, what can you be the best in the world at, and what drives your economic engine, that's where you should be. Whether you start your business, go buy a business, wherever that is, because that sweet spot kind of fits a little bit of you and who you are, and where you want to spend your time. So for me, that Venn diagram, Michael, was my passion is helping entrepreneurs build their businesses. I know I
Mm.
can be the best in the world at, and I can actually do very well financially in. And therefore, boom, I'm going to coach entrepreneurs to build the business of their dreams. That's my mission. That's what I'm going to be doing for the next 30 years of my life. That's why I'm talking to you right now. It's the one thing I should be doing right now is talking to you for that mission. Everything feeds into that. And that fuels and ties to my life plan of what I want to achieve in my life as well. And so that's, to me, when you think about that Venn diagram, whether it be you or any other entrepreneur starting up, is like, make sure you're right in that sweet spot at the
Sweet spot.
intersection of that Venn diagram.
That's great. So, okay, so let's say people, they've gone through that, they have their 30-year life plan, they
Yep.
found more or less what their Venn is for who they are. Because
Yep.
I agree. I think sometimes especially men, I think we undervalue sometimes who we are as people, and we're looking more for how can we make the most dollars,
Yep.
and then we spend a whole life chasing dollars. And there's a book I love called "Personality Isn't Permanent." I can't remember who the author was, but his entire thesis was that the goals we chase inevitably becomes the people that we are.
Yep.
And so I've learned that in many different ways, because if you're chasing a specific goal, you always end up collecting people along the way that are chasing similar goals or that want to help you with that goal. It doesn't matter if you're selling drugs. It doesn't matter if you're owning McDonald's, or if you're opening teacher training around the U.S. You will go into these little pockets of micro universes, these ecosystems, and you'll meet everyone else in there. And we all know that we become a amalgamation, the sum of the people that we hang out with. And so I think of that concept all the time, all the time. So that's why I think how important it is, how you said, to realize where that special part is of you that you can add to this. And it's normally not going to be something only chasing dollars. It'll really be something that I think is more special.